for this little one-day levitation project thing, what we are going to do is actually, let's just show you the pictures, okay? So we are going to create the illusion of levitating. Okay, there's lots of different ways that we can do this. And I'll show you a couple different final examples here. Here's another one as well, right? Oh, I added a little extra on this one. But the idea is to make it appear as if somebody is kind of, whether it's floating off the ground, you know, lots of different things that we can do here. So let's kind of pop this up. So with this one, once again, it kind of makes it look like she's just kind of hovering in midair or getting blown away. So there's lots of different ways that we can kind of play around to kind of get this illusion. But the first thing we need to do is we need to get photos, okay? So photos, you're going to need 2 photos for this. We're going to use a tripod and some fancy cameras, but we need 2 photos to basically be identical in space, except that one has people in it and one is just basically a scene or a backdrop, okay? So we have one photo here, the other one there. And you can see this one moves a little bit, so that's a little bit of an issue, and we can kind of deal with that. You know, the best possible situation is that as we switch between the 2 photos, they're identical / exactly the same, and it makes our life a little bit easier. But we can make it work with, you know, something that's like this, so not the end of the world. As you can see in one photo, there is somebody sitting or balancing or whatever on a stool, and then the other one is basically just that backdrop. All right, so let's pull these into Photoshop and make some magic happen. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to go into Photoshop and we are going to open our photos. So I'm going to hit open. And I'm going to find those files. So I know that I put them in levitation. I have my original empty and my original person. So I'm going to actually just open up both of those and wait patiently. And it should open up 2 different pictures. Okay. So I'm going to go to my backdrop first. Cool. Let's go to my one with the person. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control A, and for you on a Mac you're going to hit Command A, and I'm going to hit Command. So that just does, A means all, right? It's no different than if I went up here and hit all, select all. Okay. Then I'm just going to copy it. Control C. Once again, I could go up here and go Edit, Copy. You know, you can do it that way. It's a little bit slower. I'm going to hit, and once again, on a Mac, you're going to hit Command C. Okay. Now I'm going to paste it. So I'm going to hit, on a PC, I'm going to hit Control V. On a Mac, you're going to hit Command V. All right. So V is for paste. Right. Once again, I could come up here, go to paste. Right. As always, it's going to show you that shortcut, which is right there. All right. So now I have my 2 pictures. All right. What I need to do is to click I need to make sure that my person layer is on the top layer, which is right here, and my backdrop is on the back. Okay. And it's a pretty simple little trick. All we're going to do is that I'm going to make a masking layer, which is this little square circle, which is right here. Okay. By clicking on that, it creates a white box next to my actual image. What I need to do is to grab a paintbrush. Boop. And I need to check out my hardness of my brush, right? That's the blurriness or like the straight cutoff aspect of my brush. So I'm going to go, I don't know, right around somewhere between 60 and 70 usually. Okay. And then I also know like my brush right now is pretty small, so I'm going to use my brackets to make it bigger. I can also just go up here and drag it one way or another. Brackets are definitely going to be faster though. Okay, so the way masks work is that black is invisible and white is visible. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure I have a black paint. I'm using my paintbrush, and I'm just going to paint over what I want to go away. And so you can kind of see here that like I have a couple issues, right? So obviously what's underneath doesn't have that same shadow as my actual image, and so we can kind of go back and fix that up a little bit. But first I want to just kind of go through and actually erase all this stuff. And you notice too, it's not erasing 100% of it at a time. Some of that's because I have my opacity at 60 and my at 76, and my flow is around 66. I can definitely bump those up, and it'll just erase things faster all at once, and it ends up kind of creating like a hard edge, which is fine. It's not the end of the world. All right, I'm going to make a little bit smaller brush using my brackets, so that way I can kind of get in there. And I'm going to kind of go in here and erase kind of close there. Okay. And obviously, like, I don't want me in this picture either holding the fan trying to make her hair blow away, so I'm going to go in and do that same thing, just basically go over the top of it. Yeah, so some of the questions sometimes like, well, Nelson, why don't you just erase? Yeah, I could, you know what, but the problem with just erasing is that you end up you can't go back and fix things, right? The problem with just straight up erasing is that I can't go through and make adjustments afterwards. So one of the questions you might be asking yourself right now is like, Nelson, why are you erasing so much? Because I know that my pictures were not perfectly lined up, and so what I'm doing is I'm finding some of those like breaks, some of those kind of like natural breaks in the photo to kind of hide the fact that things don't perfectly line up. So what I mean by that is like this line here, right? I can use that and nobody would be any the wiser. So that looks pretty good through there. Okay. So we're at a point right now where, yeah, that stuff's erased and it's gone, and okay, that's fine. But some of the stuff I may want to like add shadows and that kind of stuff to make it look a little more realistic, because obviously this right here does not look super realistic because there's a big blank space in there. So what I'm going to do to add a shadow is that I'm going to make a new layer, and this time I'm just going to use a paintbrush. I'm going to switch it to black, and I'm going to kind of paint in, Control Z. I'm going to adjust my flow and bring that down so I'm not getting 100% of it coming out at once. It's almost like, it's definitely still a little dark. So I'm going to go, we'll move around 39. So it's almost like, you can kind of think of it as almost like a spray paint. Right, the harder I push down on it, the more it's coming out, right? So if I go over it multiple times, it's going to be totally straight up black. I'm going to bring my flow even farther down to like 6. So now I can have a little bit more of like adjustment to it, right? So the more I go over it, the darker it's going to get. So I'm trying to get kind of like a gradient in there. And you're like, but Nelson, that's way too dark. I agree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this thing, and I'm going to play around with the overlay, or I'm totally blanking on what these are called, but that's okay. The way it interacts with the layers below it. So that looks a little bit better. At this point, I could go in with an eraser, or I could even make a similar mask that I did before. I'm going to bring my opacity down and my flow down, and I'm going to kind of blend these together a little bit until I'm happy with it. And once again, I could switch back to my brush, all those different things. The other way to do that would also be just to bring my opacity down of that layer until I'm happy with it, which isn't too bad right there. Okay, so at this point we're pretty much done. I mean, we could definitely get a little fancier with it. We could add more shadows and that kind of thing. Here, I'll show you how to add a shadow really quick. It'll take a couple seconds. So I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to get a paintbrush. I'm going to just kind of draw underneath of it, so, with a fuzzy bit, and I'm going to do an overlay again. And I can bring my opacity down of that layer to lighten it up. I can also change the shape of it, right, by clicking on my move tool. I'm like, oh, I want that to be a little narrower. If I hold down shift, it's going to allow me to kind of transform it a little bit, kind of however I want. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a little bit better. I can rotate it through here if I want to. Now it kind of looks like there's a shadow underneath of that. But that's basically it. So it's definitely not rocket science. You can get through this stuff kind of quick. So, play around, have fun, and we'll go from there. All right. Oh, save. Forgot to tell you about that part. File. Save. We'll save it as a PSD file, so your Photoshop file. Or I can do export. Export as. We can do a quick export as a PNG. Or if you want to put this on your phone or other things, you can go to export as, switch it to a JPEG, which is already set up. Quality 100%, lovely. Hit export, and you tell it where you want it to go, and you are set up. All right, lovely humans. Have a fantastic time doing this, and we'll go from there. Good luck.